Dwight Howard will be missing extended time. That could be over a month. He's seeking second opinions on that knee. We know that we don't exactly know what's going on. We know there's fluid in there, and of course, he had said that it was bone on bone, and we don't really know what he meant there. But it looks like Dwight is missing extended time. I have some strong feelings about that, but what are your thoughts initially?
I think it's not really very surprising. Once we heard that his knee is having problems, it's not very unusual for the problems to persist. If he is having a loss of cartilage in his knee, which hopefully it's not just total bone on bone, if he's having some cartilage loss that can account for getting edema like this, for getting some fluid in his knee, there are some procedures that might help, but they require surgery. So I think they're trying to figure out what to do with him, like what the plan is going to be.
Oh, wait,
I
wait,
think
wait, 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 wait. Are we talking about microfracture here, or what kind of
no, no, no,
surgery
no.
are we
It'd
talking?
be something else. It's because the problem is that if this is what some people think it might be, that causes bone weakness in the knee, and there are some ways to deal with it, but they kind of require long term surgery. I wouldn't be surprised if they try to put that stuff off until the summer. He can probably go, but with some pain. If it is these particular issues, it may just be that his knees kind of irritated. It's hard to say. I mean, there's probably a reason they're getting second opinions because they probably don't know exactly what to do about it and what's happening precisely. It looks like their whole goal is to have him ready for the playoffs. So as long as he's back for the playoffs and ready to go at close enough to 100%, then fine. That's the plan.
So, in your professional medical opinion, um, now, of course, you dismissed the possibility of microfracture. Is the type of procedures that we're talking about, is that something, if he has it in the off season, that is that something that would be career threatening, or not career threatening, but for a guy who's so reliant on his athleticism, is that something that should be the end of the world?
That's going to depend on what's going on with his knee. If his knee is really as messed up as some people think it is,
So it's a
then
possibility.
yeah, well, there are a lot of possibilities. We don't know what's happening exactly. So there is a worst case scenario. There's always a worst case scenario, and the worst case scenario is pretty disastrous. But the best case scenario is basically nothing. So it could be anywhere in between. I wouldn't be surprised if they're trying to figure out where it is in between there. If it is a worst case scenario, then it doesn't. Things are horrible anyway, and his career is already being threatened no matter what they do.
I, I,
Uh,
I
but
just
that,
I just get that same uneasy feeling that I had throughout the entire Tracy McGrady tenure, because this organization, this is to their credit, but it's also very frustrating. But of course, this is a good thing. They're extremely tight-lipped, so you never know what's going on with these guys in terms of their injuries. And with McGrady, it almost felt like we acquired him, and he's in and out of the lineup, and then suddenly the next day he's completely finished, and you want to keep making light of these injuries with Dwight, but I always fear the worst. It's just scary being completely in the dark like that.
yeah, I mean, my feeling is it is what it's going to be, and there's nothing to be done about it except for try to treat it as best as they can once they figure it out. This is just the I don't know. This is just the things that happen when you run a basketball team. You run the risk of guys' knees exploding on you. You also run the risk of guys banging their knees and looking like they're gonna be miss time and then coming back in the second half. So you never know. It's too early to really like say anything too definitive about it. We'll find out more as it develops. Hopefully, the second opinions he gets are the ones he wants to get. I don't know. He's probably going to be out through the All Star break. The season's gonna start getting easier anyway as time goes on. So, like I said, as long as he's back for the playoffs, I think that's what everybody is gunning for, and that's
Yeah,
really all that
yeah.
matters.
I'll go back to the long-term implications in a second, but just to follow up on what you're saying, and I had actually, as bad as this news is, but this was actually kind of what I wanted. We just wanted to see if Terrence Jones could come back and make an impact. I wanted the Rockets to shut Dwight down. It didn't make sense to keep running him out there. And in terms of seeding, a lot of people have disagreed with me here. I think you agree with me. The seeding doesn't really matter. Actually, I think you're the one who raised this point originally. The seeding doesn't matter. So if the Rockets even drop to six, it's more important for Houston to have a healthy Dwight going in the playoffs than to somehow, be at the third seed. I would rather have a healthy Dwight and be the sixth or seventh seed than to, finish at third and have him hobbling and at 50% of what he is. And I think with Terrence Jones and Josh Smith and Moody Yunus, I think that trio is good enough to tread water and stay around six or seven.
Yeah, and it's going to depend on the competition too. Like I said, the schedule's going to get easier. I think the playoff seeding only really matters for two things. The most obvious thing is try to avoid the Warriors as long as possible. Obviously, so don't try to avoid that 4-5. Actually, if they're going to stay at the one seed, you actually want to be anywhere except for 4 and 5
Yeah,
and 8, I guess.
yeah.
But uh, and then if you're really gunning for Harden to get an MVP, you kind of want to be at like a 2 seed. But I don't think that's a huge concern. That doesn't really matter as far as championships go. But I get the impression the Rockets organization would like to get that MVP trophy for him if at all possible.
It would
So
it
we'll
would
see what they
be it
do.
would be a very I mean it's they've had so much negative publicity. It would be really good for them, just something positive like that. But to go back to Dwight and not to get uh, overly sensationalistic here with for everybody, but just the thought that's been going through my mind as the news has been unfolding. I just keep thinking the worst. I mean, Dwight, he can opt out in 2016, and so up until now, the assumption was that he would opt out, and then he would re-sign with the Rockets, and then that would be his last contract, and they'd make another run with it, maybe add another piece. But now I mean, you're looking at potentially if he's hobbled, if he's not going to be the same guy, if he's going to be 60% of Dwight Howard as we know it, he's probably going to opt in and stay in that same contract, maybe making 20 plus million in 2016. So they're not going to have obviously the cap will jump, but they're not going to have flexibility to go after a guy like a Durant. So they're going to be tied to Dwight at 60%. It's it could end up being a complete disaster for Houston.
Well, the reason it would be a disaster would be if his knee just explodes. And I think you just, like I said, I think you just got to kind of take that one on the chin. Like I don't know what you can. It was a great signing at the time. The contract is fine. If his knee doesn't explode, then it's still fantastic. You're rolling the dice every time you run a guy out on the court. So
Yeah, I mean,
I don't.
you absolutely had to take that risk. I mean, even knowing that this was, I think I even used to write this back then because people would always talk about his injury concerns, and I think even if you knew there was a 60% chance that he was going to break down before the contract ended, you still had to do it because it's so
Yeah,
hard to get a guy that good. I mean, just his defensive impact alone makes him worth that.